I met Marty first time here in Cinecittà when I was with Fellini for City of Women. And then he called me for The Last Temptation, but I was busy with Baron Munchausen. And then he called me again for Age of Innocence. And Age of Innocence was my first movie with Martin. Then I did Casino, Kundun, I did set and costume, and then Bringing Out the Dead, and now this. But I heard about this movie just when I did Age of Innocence. When we start to talk about this movie, he gave to me 5 books full of researches, and then I make sketches, big sketches with all the information I have, and then I make technical drawings, and then I make models, because with the models you see three-dimensional, you have the right feeling what you're going to build. And then also it's easy for the director when it's the model, he figure out better what he wants to shoot, and sometimes it's better also for me because I don't want to build something you don't need. And then I showed all this to Marty. Marty approved this, and then I started.
Well, I think it was very important for us because the actors, when they get there, it's a real place. Sets of this size may be the last you'll ever see in a film. The exterior was the whole area of downtown New York.
I start to build the set here in middle of April, and we start to shoot September 18. So we build everything in 5 months. We built all the Paradise Square, all the interiors in the stage 5, the brewery, the Saturn Circus, and the pagoda, the Sparrow Pagoda. And at the same time, we built also the harbor with the 2 ships and all the interiors in the back lot. And then we built a section of Broadway. I have had fantastic people with me, all the carpenter, painters, and plaster, sculptor. We have had fantastic people.
Well, we'd all heard the rumors about what Dante was up to, who became like the wizard of the 5 points through conversations with Martin and others that had been over to Cinecittà to see what was going on there. It had already taken on a kind of mythological status, but nonetheless, to actually see it with one's own eyes, it was quite astonishing.
In terms of images and in terms of the scale of it, it's the most exciting because it has so much to offer. And we're treating his sets like we're shooting on location. We can photograph like almost everything in every direction. It's all like 360.
The sets, firstly, are fantastic. Dante Ferretti, you know, it's got a very Italian flair. I think the whole movie has got a very extravagant look to it. The sets, for me, are wonderful because there's a lot of scale and scope and largeness to them. So we're dealing with big strokes all the time in the movie, in as much as lots of actors, lots of stuntmen, lots of crowd. So it's fun dealing with large entities rather than, you know, 2 people fighting in a train carriage, which is exciting in its own way, but this is a totally different view. And I think the sets, the street here, Broadway, the scope and the width of Broadway is a great sort of set to play with. You know, I've had Cameron Diaz coming down here with a building behind me on fire, big screen looking stuff. It's got a very, very old world expense and expanse to it, I think. This certainly has got a big budget look and feel to it, which is wonderful to play with.
The whole city created, isn't it? It's downtown New York, it's there. I mean, wherever you go around the corner, you go further, go down to the dock, come back, past the warehouses. I mean, it's extraordinary. You don't have to suspend your disbelief for very long.
Anywhere you look on that set, you can't imagine that it's something that was created a couple of months before. The aging, the timelessness of the piece itself, and then it transports you completely back in time, and you're looking at it and you're going, wait a second, I'm confused here at what I'm seeing, because it seems so real, but at the same time, it can't be real. It was literally, and I'm sure everyone will say that it was like stepping back into time.
Every corner of every place you looked was the city at the time, and New York had to be recreated there because
It's no more.
it's not the same New York. You know, there's skyscrapers now and buildings now. At that time, it was literally like wooden shacks and two-story buildings and pigs running in the streets.
I was bowled over, and still am, by the set. It's astonishing. I love even still just wandering about the set and looking at the places and picturing individual histories in that place.
The Chinese pagoda had this amazing candle chandelier with probably a couple hundred candles on it, and they had to light it every time before they took it up. It takes like 20 guys to light it, and it was so beautiful, it was so rich.
The whole set just evoked this period, and you just got a sense of the scale of New York in those days and just how precarious life was too. I mean, these buildings were essentially wooden shacks, and people lived in them and lived underneath them, and like rabbit warrens.
When you work on location, even if the spirit of the place where you are, the building or the fields, it's always imbued with some kind of spirit there. And even in conflict, you can find a way of using that. In a studio, there is nothing, unless you're interested in the ghosts of other movies, which obviously we're not. So you begin with nothing. You build these sets, you try and create a world, but there's no inherent life in those places. And what Dante managed to do was to provide us with everything that we needed to feel at home, you know, to make a home for ourselves, because that's all it is. You make a home. Everyone has to make their home. In my case, it was Satan's Circus and the 5 Points. And I really grew to love those places.
Every time I mention to people that I'm shooting this Martin Scorsese film called The Gangs of New York in Italy, they get this startled expression like, why would you shoot The Gangs of New York in Italy? And as soon as I got here, I realized why, because they built this whole town with 2 ships in a harbor and, you know, this whole main street. Makes my job really easy, actually. You walk around, it's like, I don't have to imagine anything, I'm here. I mean, every detail is accounted for.
That section of old New York was built so that if we wanted to do a scene inside Satan's Circus, let's say, which was Bill the Butcher's place, and we wanted to change it to the barbershop, which were Monk McGinn, that was his place, played by Brendan Gleeson, it was all ready to go. And people say, oh, Marty, you spent almost a year in Rome, pre-production and shooting. Oh, it must have been great. I said, no, I was in New York. I was at the 5 Points. I don't know about you guys.
People ask, did you learn any Italian? I'm like, no, I was in New York.
I keep remembering John Lennon's line about, you know, he was asked why he lived in New York, and he said, well, if he'd been born in Roman times, he would have lived in Rome. And here we are in New York and Rome. I mean, how good is that?